This episode of the Driving Safety Show is sponsored by Drivers Alert, celebrating 30 years of helping companies keep their drivers safe. To learn more, visit driversalert.com. Distracted driving, drunk driving, drowsy driving. You want safer roads, and so do we. You're listening to the Driving Safety Show. Hear insights, in-depth analysis, and expert advice from key players in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors who are leading the way in making our roads safer. Are you ready to join us? And now, your host of the Driving Safety Show, Rich Sordahl.
Welcome to the Driving Safety Show. It's episode number 26. Today's guest is the manager of the motor vehicle program at Pacific Gas and Electric Company, better known as PG&E. Headquartered in San Francisco, PG&E is an investor-owned utility employing over 22,000 people and providing natural gas and electricity to more than 5.5 million customers across California. This makes PG&E the largest utility company in the United States. Steve Dumont, welcome to the show.
Yes, thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Really looking forward to this conversation and hearing what PG&E is doing over there. And one of the first things I wanted to ask you is just how did you get started in this career in health and safety?
Yeah, thanks, Rich. So my background in history and safety is over the past couple of decades. I had some passion around, as a young man trying to get into the path of a career, and didn't necessarily start off in health and safety, but had some experiences in my previous kind of young life that steered me in this direction. And really, it's been a blessing and something that I've really, really enjoyed, especially helping with not only people within the companies I've worked for remain safe and healthy, but also how the influence and impact we have as a company on the public. So, yeah, it's been great.
Before we get into the details of how PG&E is utilizing the How's My Driving program and what you are doing with fleet safety, maybe you can help us understand what the size of the fleet is at PG&E and what those vehicles look like.
Yeah, sure. So obviously PG&E, we're a large gas and electric utility, and we have approximately 9,000 over-the-road vehicles. We have about 15,000 assets, which that 9,000 comprises of that fleet. So I'd say about 7,000 of those 9,000 over-the-road license-plated and steering wheel type vehicles are in your kind of lighter and medium duty class. So anything from a small sedan pickup truck all the way to kind of your larger utility bed F-350 type vehicle. So those about 7,000. Then we have about another 2,000 kind of heavier duty pieces of equipment, things that weigh greater than 26,000 pounds and are regulated by the DOT and are kind of permitted and required special commercial type vehicles.
And when employees are out in the field, maybe you can help us kind of paint that picture of what is some of the work that they're doing and maybe some of the dangers that they're confronting on a regular basis.
Yeah, so our service territory is a very large one, large footprint in California. We have approximately 2/3 of the state of California, ranging from anywhere from Bakersfield, kind of in the South and Central Valley area, all the way north to almost to the Oregon border. And so everything in between, right? So you have your very densely populated city type of environments and very rural areas where our equipment and assets are located. So what that does is it creates kind of a very complex and hazardous situation for our drivers that are doing things as simple as, appointment type work, meeting customers at their homes and their businesses to make sure that their gas and electric service is either working properly and meeting with those customers, to crew type work where, digging trenches, also, stringing electric wires either underground or, overhead. And so it's wide ranging, and those risks and hazards are very apparent and present for our workforce, and can wide greatly from one day or trip to trip, if you will.
And what about weather? Of course, we think of California, we think of wonderful weather, but still there's some extreme ranges there in temperature and conditions as well that you're facing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very, very diverse, not only geography, but as you mentioned, weather conditions. And so you're anything from the coastline, from the Pacific Ocean to the Sierra Nevadas, and north and south of that. So what that does, from a microclimate and a larger, macroclimate level, we do have wide swings in weather, and it's not necessarily all what they show in the movies with all sunshine in the state of California. Specifically in our northern area of the service territory, it's a lot more wet than people typically think of California, as well as in the mountain ranges where we have not obviously snow and other type of conditions that come along with that and create challenges for our drivers and our fleet.
And one question I was meaning to ask you too is when let's say you do have an emergency situation, there's a power outage. How do you deal with shifts and fatigue with employees, and dealing with, of course, electricity being such a dangerous environment to begin with? How does PG&E deal with managing fatigue?
Yeah, it's a great question, Rich. I mean, we obviously are challenged with the fact that our type of service and the commodities that we deliver aren't an 8 to 5 Monday through Friday type of operation. We are constantly dealing with across that large footprint that I described, either smaller level single customer outages and potentially gas situations where we need to have a workforce that is not only able to move and flexible to adapt and regionally and locally deal with those emergencies, but we obviously have to have people kind of in the wings ready to take over and cover those shifts on a 24 by 365 basis. And so with that, we have, fatigue management policies when larger emergencies happen. We obviously put requirements on those type of shifts and work capabilities. And so, it's not something that's very easily solved for, especially when you're looking for coverage and making sure that we have the appropriate resources and the ability to move to local areas where a larger situation arises.
And what about the nature of vehicle accidents that you see? What are some common scenarios that you often encounter?
Yeah. So we typically year over year see a majority of our incident types in the kind of low severity, high frequency type of scenarios. So backing and striking stationary objects are the types of incidents that really are the lion's share. And they are unfortunate because in many cases, they're very and completely preventable. And, but when you're talking about some of those more at speed, more severe type of crashes, we see a lot of people, striking the rear of third parties. So hitting third party vehicles, following too close, traveling too fast for conditions. And so we have specific mitigations and controls we are implementing and have been implementing for a number of years to address those specifically. And really the 1-800-HOW's My Driving program is a helpful and insightful tool to help us get ahead of accidents and be more of a leading indicator into those types of crashes.
And of course, in the news, we hear so much about phone use behind the wheel. Distracted driving, it seems to, just in my own anecdotal experience, it just seems to be continually, increasingly getting worse. What is PG&E doing to kind of combat that situation?
Yeah, so a few years ago, PG&E has taken the stance and the approach with a company-wide policy to the extent possible that we can control distraction and prevent it, at least from a company perspective. I don't think you can ever 100% eliminate it, but we have a no phone policy, phone-free driving at all times. That means texting, emailing, calls, even Bluetooth hands-free devices are not approved or appropriate or allowed while driving on company business. And that applies not only just for a company logoed vehicle or rental vehicle, but also when you're driving your personal vehicle on company business. The expectation is that people do not drive while talking or using their phones. And more importantly, the guidance around it can wait and to pull over and park in a safe, secured location before you return a call or take a call. So we're pretty happy with that, not only support from our leadership and that policy, but we are continuing to mature into that as a company and the expectation.
Now, Steve, you're responsible for the How's My Driving program at PG&E, right?
Yes, I am.
And you've been using the program for several years now.
That is correct. Yes, we've had a vendor or a program of some sort since approximately the over 10 years. So it was the 2008 timeframe.
And for those in the audience who are not aware, the How's My Driving program is a decal-based program that you'll see has a phone number, 800 number on the back with a unique identifying feature. So there's a number that is specific to that vehicle. And so if somebody sees an unsafe behavior, such as an unsafe lane change, speeding, maybe using the phone behind the wheel, then that number is used to make the call. And then it goes through our call center and we take that report, and then it goes through a vetting process, ensure that the driver is where they say the driver was, and then we verify all the details, and then that gets forwarded to a safety director at the appropriate company. So programs have been around for 30 years and lots of tweaks gone. It's amazing when you hear people on the street. I'll just be in the airport or at the store, and they'll see a shirt and they'll ask me a question about the product, and it's obviously on the surface it looks so simple, but they have no idea in many cases just all the complexities that go on behind the scenes to make sure that those reports are valid, since we screen out 60 to 70% of those calls. So I'm glad to hear that it's working well for you. And so with that said, maybe you can help the audience understand in PG&E's instance, in your particular situation, how are you employing the How's My Driving program?
Yeah, so Rich, we use the program really as that, as I mentioned, as a leading indicator, right? So we have taken the approach that we are trying to identify opportunities to coach our employees, improve those driving behaviors prior to accidents occurring. And so the 1-800-HOW's My Driving, along with a few other elements within our PG&E program, are very insightful, very helpful, and they allow, like you mentioned, that vetting process and give really the supervisor and manager level of the organization an opportunity to have really crucial conversations with their employees about things that are being observed on the roadways in our service territory. The other thing that it also does is it provides opportunities where in some cases our vehicles are complimented for their driving, and allows that supervisor and manager to really highlight the good things that are going on out there. So we've used it really to help not only identify our areas of opportunity, but also areas to shine the light on, shine where things are going well. And so it's really proven to be helpful, insightful, and in some cases, we built it to where it can really bright line for supervisors and managers where to pay more attention.
I love how you mentioned the point about the complimentary calls, because we always highly recommend when companies are implementing the How's My Driving program that it's not a punitive program. It's designed to help everybody stay safe and go home and see their families and live to see another day. And so I think it's always important when you're implementing these types of fleet safety programs, the employees understand that you're really trying to help them be safe.
I agree. And it's one of those things where, if you don't take that approach, it can already be there's a lot of, doubts in people's minds. So utilizing it for what it's worth and taking those complaints, compliments, any feedback you're getting from, in our case, our customers, we find that to be of value because it's unsolicited and it's really, the best opportunity to take action and use that feedback to improve.
Now, if a driver has one call, let's say in a 12-month period, are you having to be involved in every one of those, or do you have a series of supervisors where, depending on their location, they're the ones that take care of those issues by having the coaching sessions and going back and forth to understand the situation? How does that work in particular?
Yeah, so what we've done is really built the system to be not only handled at that local level, because what we find is that that first frontline supervisor and the leadership through we have various lines of business within our large organization. That's really where the ownership of safety resides. Nobody wants the suits coming in from the corporate ivory tower and talking to our drivers each and every time something gets called in, right? So we've partnered with Drivers Alert to really have our hierarchy structure, our vehicles and how they're assigned throughout our organization fed into that database to really, at the point of entry, when those calls are received at the call center and are generated, those are automatically emailed and triggered to the line of business leadership so that they can take action timely, investigate, and take specified actions that we've laid out for them at a minimum to take for each of these calls. And we try to not make it so cumbersome, especially as you mentioned, if it's a person who's just gotten one call. We realize that people have a bad day here and there, but still can be afforded the opportunity. But when you start talking about multiple calls, especially in a kind of what we use or leverage as a rolling 12 months, we've found are kind of higher risk, and we kind of escalate the requirements from there depending on the number of calls that an employee receives.
And over the period of time that you've been working with the How's My Driving program, have you seen a pattern where you can identify, let's say, if somebody does receive 2 calls in a 12-month period, that you might be able to correlate that with a pending accident or something of that nature where there's intervention is really necessary to avoid a bigger incident?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, because what we, one of the ways we justified the not only implementation and standardization of how these calls are handled at the kind of single call level and 2, 3 and above was really doing an analysis of our own data, and found statistically significant correlation between multiple calls and the likelihood of being involved in a preventable motor vehicle accident. And what that turned out to be is that drivers with 2 or more within that 12-month rolling period are twice as likely to be involved in a preventable motor vehicle crash than a driver with 1 or none.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. So Steve, when you're examining the data on driving behavior, my understanding is you have a very a high level program that you've been working on regarding trying to identify risk. What are some things that you're looking for, leading indicators that help you kind of manage all that information that you're getting?
Yeah, so what we've also looked at is beyond just the How's My Driving program. We also have a telematics solution that we have installed in our company vehicles. And really what that's lended itself to is also understanding the risks that drivers present to themselves and the public when operating a vehicle at higher rates of speed, hard braking, hard acceleration type of events, and as well as even looking at things such as previous MVI history. So and when I say MVI, I mean motor vehicle incidents. It's kind of the descriptor we use, an acronym. And are they trained properly to our standards? Do they have the appropriate training, and is there supervision and leadership ensuring and following up that they have been profiled for the appropriate training courses that we have?
And speaking of training, how are you using the corrective action courses that are included with the How's My Driving program?
Yeah, we have an expectation and requirement. So a report can't even be closed out in the driver's alert How's My Driving program without an intervention and short training course that comes provided in the system. In years past, it was more of a loose requirement where supervisors and leadership could close out the reports without completing those training courses. And we partner with Driver's Alert to build or require the system to block the closure of a report until certain actions are completed, one of those being a training course.
And one other thing that I hear quite a bit from companies that are really proactive and successful in helping to minimize incidents on the road is this concept of ride-alongs. Does PG&E do that? And maybe you can tell us about how that works.
Yes, we do require a ride along with their supervisor for each complaint call. That at the single call level. So that's one of the actions that I just described that are required. If they get two or more within that 12-month rolling period, they've obviously had a ride along with their supervisor. And what we require at that point is a ride along with a corporate safety representative to then also provide a second set of eyes and feedback to the supervisor for their coaching session and interventions with that driver. It provides an opportunity for someone who's maybe not as close to the work with the employee and to have a second set of eyes and really help, let the employee know that we not only care, but we're paying attention and we want to help them prevent these types of behaviors that occur when things are called in.
Steve, as we wrap things up, are there any special projects that you're working on, maybe that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, so we've always got something going on, Rich. With a large company and technology moving at the pace that it is, we are constantly overturning every stone. One of the specific areas that we're looking at is building a very comprehensive driver scorecard, really for at the supervisor level to give them insight into areas across a wide spectrum within the program. So as some of your listeners may have, they may have a telematics program with one vendor that has its own source of data and an internal motor vehicle incident reporting system that has its own data. And in this case, a 1-800 How's My Driving program that has data coming from another source and training within its own learning management systems. And so what we're looking to do is provide a kind of a cross-pollination in a single data visualization tool and a reporting system that will allow supervisors to see the drivers that report to them where the risk resides. So how are they performing in each of those fields that we not only know are leading indicators, but also are potential predictors of future incidents. This way, after an incident occurs, they can not only review that with their leadership and the driver to really understand the call to action, but also from a proactive perspective, even before an incident occurs, really know who they need to be paying attention to the most and help them get out in front of incidents before they occur.
Wow, that's really impressive. I definitely get the feel that you have one of the most proactive fleets out there when it comes to road safety. So I salute you for that one.
Well, I appreciate it, Rich. We have a long ways to go. We're not perfect, but we do think that we are promoting the right type of culture of reporting incidents, but more importantly, trying to where those things reside, not only improve, but provide the tools necessary and technology necessary for that frontline leadership to proactively address and take into account things that their employees and the public are exposed to.
So for anyone who wants to learn a little bit more about what Pacific Gas and Electric is doing, all you have to do is go to pg&e.com, and there's a wealth of information on there. I've been there, and it's a really nice website. Steve, before we go, any parting message you wish to leave with us about safety?
Yeah, Rich, thank you for that. I'd say with safety, it starts with the individual. It's really the hearts and minds of people, and some of these programs and technology, as it moves quickly, to always remember that your work is never done. We've never arrived. This is not a destination, and this is something that we will continually be on a journey, no pun intended here, with driving safety as well as other aspects of safety. And driving truly is one of the most dangerous things that any of us do on a given day. It is sometimes, I think, because of the way we've designed vehicles and the technology, we rely a lot on technology to solve our problems. And really, while it solves for one, there's always something that will pop up as a result of that implementation that is a different risk. It may be, not the same risk, but it may be different. And so I encourage everybody to continually never, give up, even when things are challenging. The implementation of these things can sometimes be difficult, but the fruit of your work will pay off, and especially if we improve not only safety for our own workforces, but really for the general public and society, because ultimately it influences all of our lives potentially.
Very, very well said. Steve, thanks so much. It was really an honor to talk to you. I'm really impressed with everything you're doing there at PG&E, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, Rich. I really appreciate the opportunity to share what we're doing. And again, we'll talk soon, I hope.
Thank you. Once again, that was Steve Dumont, manager of the Motor Vehicle Program at Pacific Gas and Electric Company. Please share this podcast with your family, friends, and coworkers, and help us educate the public about critical driving safety issues. 40,000 people die on America's roads every year, 1.3 million worldwide. That's just unacceptable. Until next time, please drive safely.
You've been listening to the Driving Safety Show. To stay up to date on the latest episodes, visit driversalert.com/driving-safety-podcast. There you can sign up for episode notifications, listen to past episodes, and even request to be a guest on the show. And don't forget, the Driving Safety Show is the show that features the movers and shakers who are working hard to make our roads safer. See you next time.